Hello everyone. I I hope life is going as it should go for everyone. And I had not posted for almost a month. There is no specific reason for it actually. Just from the past few weeks, this feeling has been very strong that whatever we are discussing on the channel, most people are really not interested about it. Okay? Because most people consider life in a different sense. For most people, life is fulfilling the checkbox that the society has provided us to have a beautiful family, and you try to make a house, you try to do your job, you try to get promotions in the job, you try to rise up, then you get old and wait for death to come and take you. So, or you don't do that, you keep trying, try to keep growing. And so in that sense, the channel is not providing any kind of substance to fulfill that dream. The purpose of our channel is quite opposite, is to see the fallacy of the dream. We are more focused in realizing that the pattern is not real. Now, that realization can be very painful for people. So that's why from last week I have had this strong feeling that the reason the channel grows so slowly is because whatever we talk about is applicable to very few people who really want to apply this in their lives, and most people are not really interested in it. But for the very few, whoever want to apply it, we can move forward. One approach is to try to grow the channel forcefully. You pay the ads, you pay everything else, and you try to forcefully grow. As Mr. Prashant is always saying in his talks, that he has been chasing people and people haven't come to him. So either we can go for that approach, but for that as well we need a lot of funds to fund the channel. So let's go to today's video. I want to share a bit about attachment today. This is directly related to what Krishna starts to speak in the Bhagavad Gita. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is related to the introduction of the scene where everything is taking place, that all the warriors are standing and this and that. And then from first chapter, the warrior Arjun also presents his case, why he doesn't want to fight and what are the arguments for which he stands for We are not taking those arguments today. We can take them as well someday, but for attachment, I would come straight to the reply that Krishna gives to Arjun. And I think that's the beginning of the second chapter. It's called Sankhya Yoga. So the reply that Krishna gives is directly aimed at attachment. The reply roughly translates to that why in this moment of great urgency, you're standing in the middle of a battlefield and something is expected from you, a kind of response is expected from you. That is what is called responsibility, is to give the right response, as Mr. Krishnamurti puts it. So Krishna says that in the middle of the battlefield, when we are ready to start this, why have you developed this poison of attachment? And he finishes the statement by adding a few flares that it's not suitable on great people. This poison of attachment is not good. It doesn't take you to the path to the heavens. It only brings disgrace to you. Okay? Now, Krishna is not interested in these heavens or disgrace, this concept of disgrace or everything. But centrally, he wants to say why you have been affected by attachment at this moment of urgency in the war. But he's totally aware of the situation or the mindset of Arjun. And he, that's why, adds a bit of adjectives, special words to intensify the impact of the statement on Arjun. That why. So, I'm just connecting that to how I'm presenting it in the video today, is that attachment is inattention. Okay? They are both the same. Now, in my statement, it sounds very dry, it sounds very mathematical, but in Krishna's statement, it's a bit more impactful. So I'm just connecting it that way. Attachment is kind of a poison, as Krishna puts it. So, why is attachment been connected to poison or inattention? In general, attachment is considered as something very, very, very beautiful by our society. We consider it as a sign of love. If someone is attached to someone else, we say this is a sign of love, that the person loves the other person or the object for which they are attached to. But have we ever looked at attachment, what attachment really is, and how attachment is creating this sense of inattention? Because if this is true, that attachment creates this sense of inattention, then it directly affects the decision making in the moments of being attached. If I am attached to something, then I am inattentive about that object or person. And if I'm inattentive about that person or object, then my decision regarding that person, regarding that object, is going to come from the state of inattention. And because the decision or the action is going to come from a state of inattention, this action would also inevitably be incomplete. Or if you don't want to use the word incomplete, if it sounds a bit unclear, you can say that action would also have the colors, the taste, the nature of inattention in it, because it's getting birth from the state of inattention. The action is getting born from the state of inattention. So this is the logical chain. How inattention has been called, how attachment has been called as poison. Why Krishna says attachment is poison? Because attachment creates this sense of overwhelming inattention. Of course, it creates all the other aspects of it as well, like fear, anger, anxiety. But I'm not going there today. I've chosen the word inattention because an inattentive person then ends up doing all those things anyway. So let's look at how attachment does that. We've shown the chain of causality. We've shown the chain of connections that attention is being affected. Inattention comes when you are attached, and from inattention, the action is affected, which is natural. A drunk person will act in a drunk way. Okay? So, an inattentive person will act in a inattentive way. An inattentive person can also attack, actually. So, how attachment does this? How attachment creates this sense of inattention? So, attachment is to get in contact with something. And this is a psychological contact. I attach myself to something. You can put an object or the photograph of the person with whom you are really attached. And you can move forward with the video now. As you're attached, you try to join yourself with the object or the person with whom you want to get attached. Now, why you want to get attached to that person? That is because of the initial state you are in. Because you feel empty inside, because you feel lonely inside, you want to get connected to something. You want to fill the emptiness with something because you feel empty inside. So naturally, the ego, the mind, the center of the mind, tries to make connections because it itself feels lonely. It itself feels empty. And that emptiness, that loneliness is not something that the mind can stand with for a long time. Okay? So the solution the mind comes up with is to make connections. That let's make connections to objects, to people, with people. And in those connections, we will feel better than the current state of loneliness or emptiness. So the mind starts to move outwards, right? The mind starts to move outwards because outward is the only place it finds options to get attached to. In your own mind, there are also old memories, and the mind can get attached to those as well. But we are not going on that aspect as well. We are keeping it very simple, looking at an object, because that's where most attachments are going to lie. And then there are some deeper attachments in the mind, but you can apply the same principle even there. So the mind starts to grope out, the mind starts to move outwards as it observes different objects. Now, as it starts to move outwards, it scans different objects. It doesn't want to be attached with everything it sees. Okay? You would see that. You don't want to be attached to all the people around you. It's only a few with whom you want to attach yourself. So, as the mind moves outwards, it also starts to make a list of criteria based on which it would decide that with what should I attach myself to. Okay? So the mind was initially feeling empty and lonely. It starts to move out, it starts to move outwards, and as it moves outwards, it observes that there are so many things that I can get attached to. So how should I decide where to get myself attached to? Because practically I cannot attach myself to everything. That would be too much. There are too many flowers, there are too many trees, too many people, too many objects in the world, and I cannot attach myself with everything. So the mind solves that problem. It thinks it solves that problem by deciding it by itself. So the mind decides which objects it should pick from all the objects it can see. Okay? So the first action from the mind was to observe the world and observe its own emptiness and loneliness. And then the mind starts to move outwards, right? And then it faces another problem, that there are so many things that it can get attached to, so many people, things. And then it performs a second action where it goes to scan. It scans everything and then decides that, okay, I pick these objects from which I will get attached to. Now, while doing this second action, the mind forgets that the scanning of the objects happens from the same state in which it was originally in. Okay? I'm sorry for if it's getting a little difficult to follow. That's why I'm speaking slowly. So, as the solution of loneliness, the mind starts to attach, and when it starts to attach, it sees there are so many things to get attached to. That's the reason I'm repeating it again and again. It solves this problem of so many things by self-deciding which objects it must get attached to. But it itself is in a state of loneliness and emptiness. And from that unsatisfied state, it decides that I should pick these objects or these people, and eventually these people or object will satisfy me if I get attached to them. Okay? So the criteria, the selection of the objects and the people also happen from an unsatisfied, lonely or empty state. And because of that, the selection itself has the imprint of that loneliness in it. The action of selection, which objects to get attached to, which people to get attached to, also has an imprint of that loneliness, of that emptiness, because the action is coming from that state. It has the imprint of all the other memories the mind already has, that it has been told whether the person should be tall, the person should be like this and that. All that is there while choosing a person or choosing an object. But there is also the loneliness and the emptiness along at the same time as it selects stuff, people. And once the selection is made from that state of unsatisfaction, it starts to desire to make this attachment. So many things, so many people, a filter is applied, a selection process is applied, and now the list has come down to a few things, a few people that it wants to attach to. But even then, it faces another problem, that whether those people or those objects are available to be attached to. Because the object it wants to get attached to might be out of its financial range. It might not be able to buy that object. It can get attached to that object, but it might not be able to have it. And that is where desire is born. Desire is trying to bridge your imaginary hope that certain objects or people will satisfy your emptiness and loneliness. And to make an effort to get those people or objects, you desire. The mind desires that, yes, now let's desire. So, attachment is a hook in the other object or person, and then the action is performed using desire. That, okay, now I'm pretty sure I need that object, I need that car, that house, and then I will not feel bad, and now I should desire it. And desire can keep going for days or years, depending on how you feel. So the mind is totally and totally trying to desire all the objects it has filtered itself. The mind itself has concluded that these are the objects or people which will fix my problem of loneliness, emptiness. So I must have them. Right? Now, if someone asks the mind, how can you be the doctor of your own disease? Like, you yourself are in a problem of emptiness and loneliness. So how can the patient diagnose itself? You need a doctor to make something. And this is, I'm saying it not as a mental doctor, but just as an example. I'm trying to show you the trick the mind is playing, that the mind decides that, yes, I also know how to fix this loneliness, how to fix this emptiness, and it starts to pick objects and people, and then it starts to desire to have them. But here comes the main hook of the statement, that the moment the mind makes the filter and hooks itself in an object or a person, the whole point of looking at that object or at that person completely changes. When you look at something as just an object, as just a person, that's one way of looking. And the other way of looking is, this is my object or this is my person. Now the observation has a totally different nature to it, you can say, a totally different quality to it. Okay, now the observation is very focused on that object, on that person, because now that object or person have become important to the observer, to the mind. And because that object or person are important to the mind starts to exclude other things in presence of them. Okay? Because the mind has put importance into those objects or people, because it is unable to solve its problem of loneliness and emptiness, and then it assumes that the solution lies in attaching itself to some other things or people. And when the mind attaches itself to something, it changes the way it observes that thing or person with which the mind is getting attached to. Now, there's a motive in that observation. There's a direction in that observation. This is what I want. This is what I desire. This is what I'm attached to. I have to protect it from other things. I need to make sure that I get it before someone else gets it, because a lot of people want the same thing in the world. So all of that movie comes into the picture of observation. Now, observation is not just observing, it's also calculating. Okay, so we can say it like this: with the attachment, your observation is very calculated. It's very calculative, it's very programmed, because it has so many motives in it regarding the person or the object you are observing. But when you're not attached to something, then your observation is not calculating anything. It's just observing. Okay? Yeah. So the mind has two options. One is to observe without attachment, but when it does that, it assumes that it has a problem of emptiness and loneliness, and without getting attached, that problem cannot be solved. This is what the mind inherently believes, and you can see it in everyone's action. So instead of not doing anything about the loneliness and the emptiness, it starts to solve the problem by attaching itself. But when it attaches itself to things, to people, it creates another problem, that it becomes inattentive. The nature of observation, the quality of observation totally changes the moment it attaches itself to something. And the mind doesn't observe it. The mind only observes the fact that if I attach myself, I will get this in return. I will get the company of this person, I will get the comfort of this object, whatever. But it totally neglects the fact that in that attachment it forms, it becomes inattentive towards that object and towards other things. Okay? It totally is incapable of observing how that person or that object actually is in itself, and it only observes that person or that object as a solution towards its emptiness, as something it must get attached to. If I have to say a little harsh, as something it must consume, so that it keeps feeling that it's not lonely. So it wants to keep attached to itself. Okay? And then inattention is totally natural when the quality of observation changes for the mind. Now, that inattentive state creates all sets of other problems. Okay? Because all actions you would do from that state, as we said in the beginning of this video, will have the quality of that inattention. And as all those actions will have the quality of inattention, all those actions will create further problems for you. Okay? So you are starting a chain of incomplete actions. And every incomplete action will bring its own problems. So, a infinite chain of problems has been initiated, has been started. And after some years, the mind will eventually conclude that life is very painful. Life is very, very much full of sorrow because the problems never end. But it totally refuses to see that because of its own attachment, inattention has come. And because of that inattention, all the problems have come. So, can it let go of the inattention? Can it let go of attachment? Because attachment is creating this inattention. Okay? Attachment is the narrowing down of your observation. Your observation narrows down drastically. Have you seen when you observe something that you desire tremendously, how you totally forget everything else? You are just totally on that object or person. Everything else becomes non-existent, right? At that moment, someone can come and stab you and you wouldn't even know because you are not even observing what's going around. In the jungle, you would be eaten in 5 minutes because in the jungle, you cannot afford to be inattentive. Either it's death or inattention. You die because someone is always ready to eat you. You are someone's food all the time. So you need to be attentive. Okay, you can see it in the Discovery Channel or National Geographic Channel, how attentive the animals are when they come to drink water, because they know everyone will attack them during that moment. Because to water they are attached, because water is precious, as it fixes the thirst. It fixes a problem. Like attachment appears to fix a problem of loneliness. It doesn't fix it, because if the problem was fixed, it wouldn't come back in that sense. But a person feels lonely all the time, even with attachment. So, the mind's central problem is loneliness and emptiness. And to fix that problem, the mind moves to attach. That's the first mistake, because the mind assumes that it can fix it. It can become its own doctor. And the mind also doesn't observe the problem. It starts to put out the solution without even gathering data about how loneliness is, how emptiness is, and how should it approach to solve it. So all that happens, and straight away mind starts to attach. I'm lonely, I must attach. And straight away that attachment leads to inattention. And in that inattentive state, all the incomplete actions start to happen. And eventually, the link of problem and your everyday life is established. Okay? That's why in the first sentence of Gita's second chapter, where Krishna starts to reply, he says, "Hey Arjun, from where have you gathered this poison of attachment?" Attachment is totally and totally poison in that sense, because you could say it gives a certain kind of comfort to the mind, but that comfort is self-generated, right? Because the solution was self-generated. The mind itself said, "Give me that and I will not feel lonely." When it gets it, it feels the comfort for a few minutes, for a few seconds, for a few days. But then eventually the loneliness comes back, because this solution is not the right solution for loneliness. Okay? That's the evidence of it. And the chain of attachment goes on, because then even then the mind doesn't learn that maybe I made a mistake. I shouldn't have attached myself to something because it didn't give anything important in return. I only got some fishy stuff for a few days and that's it. But the mind makes another illogical conclusion because it was already attached. So naturally, from that inattentive states, it makes another conclusion that, maybe I attached myself to the wrong object. Let's go to the next object. Maybe this relationship has failed. Let's go to the next relationship, next person, and that will be the perfect one, I'm pretty sure. And that's how the mind keeps itself attached, keeps itself inattentive, because it refuses to face the state of loneliness. It refuses to face the state of emptiness. It doesn't want to face it. So that is how, or that is why, inattention and attachment are linked together. Okay? So I hope you would be able to apply this every day in your life, because we are attached every day in our lives. And there are so many things that you can find easily where you are attached. Find those things, see how you live around those things, see how you behave around the people you are really attached to. You will see all the chains that we have just discovered, that we have just exposed, all the links just showing you. And you would be wondrous why I had never seen all this in my life before. Okay? Even though it's so self-evident, it's so open in front of you, yet the mind refuses to observe it. This is like one of the most beautiful shocks that will revoke your trust in your own mind. That how can my mind be so stupid that it didn't observe this fact of attachment and inattention for so many years, when the fact was just right in front of me. Okay? That is how the beautiful shocks of awareness comes. It shocks you that how can I be so blind towards something for so many years, when it was something I was doing every day, when it was something so obvious. So let's try to see this aspect of attachment in our lives. Let's try to expose it everywhere we have it. And then when you expose it, when you see the fallacy of it, when you see the barrenness, if I can use that word, barren, a land which gives no fruits. If you see how barren attachment is, then it slowly and slowly starts to drop by itself. You don't have to do anything about it. The observation of the fact of its fallacy, of its impotency, itself starts to reduce its power over you. Then the mind asks the real question, is there a genuine solution to loneliness, emptiness inside? And that is the beginning of meditation. So in one way, observing all this is also a kind of meditation, but the quality of meditation tremendously changes when the mind can drop things, when the mind can put things aside, and it's not afraid to stand without any support. When the mind is totally comfortable to stand without any support, then meditation becomes something totally I don't know what's the word, fresh, you can say. It becomes totally free of all that it had been holding. And then I think that will be enough for today, and we will meet next week. Have a nice week.